Welcome into another episode of Cheat Code Weekly, where we talk about collecting and investing in video games. I, of course, am Greg here, joined once again by Henry. Today, we're going to talk about which IPs or franchises are worth investing in with video games. Which kind of games or characters should you target, and how you should try and arrange these different franchises in your mind. Is it a tier 1 IP that every single person knows, like Pokemon? Or is it more of a fifth tier kind of franchise character, long past its prime? It might even just be dead now. An example I thought of was Thunder Force. Are you even familiar with that at all, Henry?
Hell no.
Yeah.
Nope.
So Thunder Force is, if you do know of it, you probably know of it from Sega Genesis. Started in 1983, apparently, ran all the way until 2008, had 6 games in the series. No one knows what it is. That is a series. That is a franchise. It's long past dead. That's a tier 5 kind of franchise out there.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you could collect Thunder Force if you want. Obviously, if it holds meaning to you, you could collect whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. But when it comes to investing, and you got to think about how relevant the IP is, right? Like Thunder Force is probably not ever going to come out again. And if it does come out, like how important is it? It's probably not going to be important at all. And unlike comics, like a lot of what comic investing happened, like what a comic investing did when the Marvel movie started coming out. People were sort of front running it. They're like, oh, the movie's going to come out, so let's go buy all the comics and then sell when the movie comes out. That doesn't sort of exist in video games, especially when it comes to like the Mario movie. I don't think it got any bump when the Mario movie came out.
I think
Right?
I think people talked about it potentially getting a bump because of what happens with comics, but I don't think it actually got any kind of bump whatsoever. No.
Yeah, it did it. And with video games, it's more so about like the long term investment of Nintendo or Microsoft or Sony into the IP. That's what matters, rather than just one off movies and you get a shot up. So something like Mario's obvious, like they're making movies, they got the theme parks. It's like the flagship franchise. It's super important for Nintendo's popularity and bottom line, really. So
And
obviously,
even when a
that's a
new
tier
Mario
one.
game comes out, again, like unlike other collectible hobbies, a new Mario game releasing doesn't like bump the price of Mario on NES. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
no, it
There
doesn't.
is no. It just doesn't hype like that.
Yeah, it's yeah. Speaking about hype, like sports cards is all about the hype with the rookies, and also the same thing with the comics, I guess, with the movies. But yeah, video games is more like I guess like your blue chip investable, where it's like yeah, these characters, they won't tear the ACL or do some crazy stuff, but it's just more steady when it
Yeah, you're
comes
not
to
going to
like
see it
the
just like
value.
pop. It's not going to pop and dip all the time. It's just going to
Yeah.
kind of be a very steady line.
So if you're gonna, obviously during 2021, everyone's speculating, stuff went crazy. But besides that, it's been pretty much like a lineup here. So when you're talking about stability and just like risk aversion to like stuff dropping because the rookie that you invest in sucks, games is sort of really you know something more safer, I would say,
Yeah,
than
no,
than
it
putting
is.
it
It
into the new
downside
rookie.
risk. Downside risk
Yeah.
is definitely different when you don't have to worry about like, did the newest movie flop? Oh, well, your comic book character's dead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Zelda obviously is there too. They're going to come out with a new Zelda movie. They don't have a Zelda theme park, but maybe they will. I don't know, but it's definitely a tier one franchise. And obviously, you mentioned Pokemon. Now, with Pokemon, the big difference is that Pokemon also has the TCG side, and that stuff is like going sort of pretty nuts right now. But even beyond that, let's talk about like a PSA 10 first edition Charizard, right? Last year sold for over 200K. Like, how much do you think of,
I'm actually
Sandshrew
surprised.
print?
I'm actually surprised First Ed Charizard is still holding over $200,000.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think a Sandshrew print that's coming up in the signature will sell for? The
What
988 plus
is it a
plus.
9.8 A plus plus?
9.8 A plus plus Sandshrew print Pokemon Red. Got the
It's
Charizard
like
on there
in my
too.
head, right? It's like I would say emotionally, I'm like kind of hopeful. Like, yeah, like Pokemon Red, 9.8 A plus plus, Sandshrew first print. Like, I I want to say over 100K, but like the logic side of me is like, man, is it 84? Is it 78? Like, do we even break the 100K barrier? $100,000 in games, man. There's a handful of them that still break that amount.
Yeah. I Don't even know if it will break 100K, to be honest. Especially since that there's a 10 out there. But like even if there wasn't a 10, I it's not going to
100K
reach
is
the
a lot of
200K
money in
level.
games.
Yeah, it's not going to reach the 200K level. Especially this year, it's not going to reach the
I
200K
get that,
level.
yeah, like
So,
cards are ahead of everything. They just are. Sports
yes.
cards have been forever. Pokemon cards obviously follow that. Games are behind. I think it. I don't think anyone should expect it to hit the same prices as cards. I know we're talking about it, but you really shouldn't expect it because we simply have less participants, less people. It's still a new hobby for games to be seen as grail investment type collectibles, if you want to put it that way.
But
Prior to
I
what,
mean,
20?
hey,
Go ahead.
but hey, Pokemon came out first on games. I don't know if people realize that, like especially the TCG kids that are collecting this crap nowadays. But it
This
came out
crap, yeah,
first.
buying all that modern crap.
All the modern crap, the Umbreon's going for 2K, even though it has like a million pop. It's sort of nuts. And
it,
when you're talking about actual rarity, like the video games where it actually got it's its first appearance of all these Pokemon, right? It just doesn't compare,
Well,
really.
even not to say Japanese should matter or the first prince or whatever, but what the Japanese Pokemon Red was the single most expensive Japanese game that sold so far. I think it
Yeah.
was an 85 for 40 something thousand.
Okay.
So, I mean, slowly but surely, I guess. Maybe they will catch up and overtake once. I don't want to say once people understand. I don't think people are stupid. I think it's not as widespread of a thought.
We are a new hobby
Yes.
compared to cards, even though people have been collecting before. But I think it's the whole mindset of you should open up your games and play it. Like I think that's taking time,
Yep.
but I feel like there's definitely like opportunity here. I think people can see that there's opportunity here since it's a new market. But video games have never been more popular. So
It's
Pokemon
breaking
games
away from that ethos. We have to get away from the playing ethos
exactly.
because games aren't sold to be collected, so people don't collect them. Or they don't view it as a collectible. It's interesting. Maybe that's a
Yeah.
topic we need to dive more into. Do people need to be told what to collect?
Yes, that would be my answer. But anyway, those
Yeah.
are the three tier one franchises. And then we can sort of move on to the tier two franchises where they're also super important. They get like all the love from Nintendo and Sony and stuff like Metroid or Donkey Kong, but they're just not up there with like the tier ones in terms of popularity. In terms of like, if you ask your uncle, hey, you know Mario, they probably know Mario. Do you know Pokemon? Oh, they probably heard it from their kids. But do you know Samus?
Yeah.
They were like, "Well, what's a Samus?"
I, I I honestly, and I think there is a like a disconnect between gamers and normies where even I would probably be guilty of this, where I would think my dad knows Halo. I don't know if he does.
Okay,
Like
I don't know.
I don't know if he could recognize Master Chief and be like, "Oh yeah, that's Halo." I
Yeah,
think there is still like I would put Halo tier 2 personally, just because I don't think it
yeah,
has that,
probably.
especially with how it is these days as a kind
Yeah,
of you know,
it's
a new Halo
struggling,
game
but
comes out, are any of your friends even playing it?
hopefully in the future we'll see if it bounces back. But I mean, these tier two IPs are still super important because they had big games come out during like the NES ages or like SNES ages. Like for example, the Metroid Hang Tab is sold for 120K
Yeah.
last year. Like that's a big price. Like you said, there are not many games that go above six figures. So
No, these are still
it's important.
huge games. They're just like that. Like if tier 1 is truly going to be the biggest of the biggest that exists, just that next tier down where they're still huge, they're
Exactly.
still super valuable. They just
Yeah.
don't have quite the wide. They aren't the Spider-Mans. They aren't your Spider-Mans.
The most important thing is that they could potentially be tier one in the future
Yep.
because the companies they still invest in it. They still
Yep.
coming out with the games, but it's just
And
not there
they
yet.
have entries on the golden age of gaming, like their first
Yeah,
entries. They could be tier 1s at some point. 100%.
they could be. But tier three IPs are more along the lines of games that are sort of dead. And like the IPs are sort of dead, but like for example,
Or
Mega Man.
dormant, however you want to, dormant maybe is the word.
Yeah, for example, Mega Man, right? Like Mega Man's big game when it comes to NES or even Castlevania, but Like the recent releases are in handhelds. Like no one really plays the DS Mega Man's. Like Mega Man Battle Network, that's cool, but that's not a
Oh, it's
mainline
niche.
Mega Man game. Yeah, it's niche. So it's not up there in terms of the company sort of investing in IP and coming out with great games that people actually want to play.
What even was the last Castlevania release? You say that now.
Bro, I don't know. Something on the DS, I think.
Well, like 360 had Lords of Shadow 2. Is that the last game?
And is it a game that people talk about or still want to play? Not really. Like I feel like the last big Castlevania game was Symphony of Night that everyone like knows about
Yeah,
and
well
want to
that
play.
that's even heralded as like a PS1 grail still.
Exactly. But ever since then, it's been got like 20 years or something like that since the last important Castlevania game came out.
Would
So
you like okay, so we have these games that are a little bit dormant or just, a tier below here. How do
yeah.
you categorize something like GoldenEye, Chrono Trigger, games that are like massive standalone hits? GoldenEye is a series, but I mean, is it like no one cares about any other game in the GoldenEye series? Are those your
Yeah.
tier threes?
Yeah, I would say so. I think tier threes are sort of like the IPs that are dormant. But the games itself that first came out, they're super important. They're considered grails. People want them. Like, everyone would like to have a great Chrono Trigger or Golden Eye, but they're just haven't been relevant for a long time.
Secret of Mana, would you throw that in there
Secret of
too?
Mana. Yeah.
Because like Secret of Mana, it's not
Yeah.
like
You know what? I don't know. I feel like Secret of Mana might be
that
a
like a
tier four niche. Yeah, it's like got like that cult following feel type of to it. Honestly, obviously, it's a SNES
yeah,
Grail,
it's a
but
SNES. That's the thing, right? It's like everyone, it's a SNES RPG absolute staple and sells for a
yes,
lot of money still.
and it's definitely lower supply than even Chrono Trigger. Um, but I don't see that IP coming back to life again. I would, I would put it in the tier three. It's got that important game. It sells for a lot of money, but it's just, yeah, the IP stagnant. Let's
Stadium
leave it.
events is the last one I want to ask you about with this tier three. Is that like a because there's that last thing of games here before we move on to tier four where it's like
Yeah.
the hobby has maintained its relevance. Think
Yes.
maybe your Panzer Dragoon Saga, your stadium events, those games that are Magical Chase on TurboGrafx 16. Are those
Mhm.
like tier three games? Because they're no one knows what the hell they are outside of gaming, but everyone
Okay.
in gaming still holds them to thousands and thousands of dollars of pricing.
Yeah, the games are important. They're considered grails. People want to collect them. The issue is, will people want to collect them 20 years from now when the people who consider them grails are no longer part of the hobby or sell out, right? So I would view tier three IPs more of like if they got their IP holders, if they wanted to reinvest into the IP again, and then like make reboot Castlevania and then make great games again, it could jump into the tier two, tier one category. But for something like Stadia events, it's just sort of like it's just there. It's considered Grail. It's a story that keeps getting told over and over again, and it
Yeah,
will always maintain its
that's
value.
the sustained relevance is in that like continual.
The story is like the Honus Wagner and Mickey Mantle, right? Like they've been dead for decades, but stadium events will still be relevant because people want it. But I guarantee you, 99% of people have never played stadium events or even
Don't
care
have
what's
to.
on it, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. So I would maybe put them at a like in between tier three and tier four because I feel like tier threes they have the opportunity to jump up to
yeah,
a tier
they
two
could climb up. They could climb
or
up.
tier maybe even tier one. God knows, but um, yeah, stadium events is dead. It will never come back
Your
again,
tier
right?
3.5, just like super expensive, relevant games, but they're never gonna
Yes,
be anything more than
they're never going to be anything more, and the only way that they
it's almost
survive
more
or
likely they
maintain
go
its
down
value.
tiers than
Exactly.
up
The
tiers.
only way it maintains its value is if the story is told over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, maybe that's the big decider. Is it more likely to go down or up a tier? And I think
Mm,
all of those big standalones are more likely to go down a tier.
yeah.
Which
I mean,
brings us to
I
tier
think
four
Chrono
IPs
Trigger.
then.
Oh,
Go ahead.
cut this part out. All right. Let's move on.
The
Let's cut
ship
this
has
part.
sailed.
Okay.
You gotta.
Yeah. Okay. My bad. My bad.
Your tier 4 IPs, your niche IPs that have a cult like following. They're never going to be huge mainstream games that they're never going to be hugely mainstreamed, and they aren't your games that were released in like the golden era. So I really think these tier 4 games, they're never going to compare to your NES, Super Nintendo, N64 franchises that came out 20 years plus now, but they're still super popular. Think about like Nier's a very popular game. You have Phoenix Wright on the Nintendo DS. Lots of games released for Phoenix Wright. A lot of people like that series, but
Yeah.
the popularity of it will just never reach that same potential, even if it does have a lot of audience.
And even if it did, the games that it came out for on the consoles will never reach the value of an NES or SNES or N64 because they're just hard case disc games. It's just not going to be there because the supply is higher and it's not in a golden age, sort of like how comics works, you know?
Yeah. The change in supply is really a big thing too. Like I know we're talking
Mm-hmm.
niche IPs, but even then, I think something like The Last of Us, super strong series, right? Super strong, has a TV show, all this stuff. Maybe it could be tier 3, maybe, but again, you get
Maybe.
into this supply issue, hard case, PS3, modern gaming. It just has so much against its actual um like growth potential kind of into the future, where it
Well,
could
yeah,
be
when
an
it comes to
absolute
value.
it can be an absolute monster grail of modern gaming. But
Yeah.
if we're going to move it into tier 3 where we're talking about stuff like your golden eyes of the world, it just, I don't think it can ever get that kind of aura around it, if you want to use that word.
It will never be a 100K game no matter how many tens you get of it. So, but
Would you
speaking
say F
about
Zero
that,
is tier 4?
yeah, I was just gonna ask about F-Zero. I feel like it sort of is because I just don't see it bumping up to a tier two ever. And for it to be a tier three game, it needs to have
It has to
the
have that
ability to
potential.
go to tier two, right? It's I mean you got Falcon and all that like the iconic characters, but and also the game just doesn't sell for much right now. Even if it was SNES, it doesn't
Yeah,
sell
no,
for
I know.
much.
Even like minty Super Nintendo copies, the first
Yeah,
ever F Zero, it's just not that expensive. It's not that sought after.
2 3K you could get like a 98 plus.
Yeah, get a
That's
beautiful
really
copy.
not
Exactly
much.
right. Keep pack peaks out at like 2 grand, and I
Yeah.
guess it's been dead for 20 years. Is that really how long F
it,
Zero's?
it's been a while,
We
man.
got F Zero
Speaking about
100. I don't think that counts for anything, but I don't know if it's going to come back ever. Frankly,
speaking about dead games, tier five. That's where all the dead games are, man. You collect them because you want to collect them, but never have the idea that it's gonna be anything in terms of investing.
yeah, this
It's
is
okay
this
to
is
collect what
almost
you
like
want.
what I would call consumable tier.
Yeah,
Consumable being that if you purchase it, the value might be gone. Think about using a consumable, right? Like once you purchase it, it's gone.
yeah.
That's kind of how I compartmentalize things in my life. I don't know if you do that at all, but you can buy like
it's like
actual objects or consumables.
it's like this comic over here, right? It's like it just I'm just buying for fun. I
Yes.
never expect it to go up in value.
Yes, you once you purchase it, you almost expect the price to go down when you have it. And yes, you can collect this stuff, but this is really where you get into your dead franchises that likely aren't ever going to get more popular. This is where you get into almost, I'd say, 80% of your Super Nintendo games, your Sega Genesis, your NES stuff, where it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really cool NES title. That's a really cool Super Nintendo game. But another 5 to 10 years, your audience of people who care or know about it is only going to get smaller.
Yeah, I think a final rule of thumb for games that we haven't talked about when it comes to tier A is if you were to ask your uncle who knows nothing about games if they know a specific character and how much you have to explain to them that it matters, I think that's sort of like the cutoff point to be like, okay, tier one, you ask your uncle, hey, do you know what Mario is? They probably do, right? Or do you know what Charizard is? Probably do. But when it comes to tier two, you're like, oh, Metroid is important because Samus is like one of the first female protagonists. They're like, oh, okay, that sort of makes sense, but you have to explain it a little bit longer, right? And
And even
then,
then, they might just be like, they might shrug at you. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, oh, who cares, right?
Yeah. Like,
And And it's something like a tier three. It's like, oh, Castlevania was an important game because it launched the Metroidvania type of games into future that became very popular. That's sort of a mouthful, right? People don't know. Regular people don't know about
Or
Simon
if you have to
Belmont.
start talking about who produced it and why the producer
Yeah, yeah,
matters,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
when you start getting into that spot of like, okay, you're not a tier one franchise or a character. You're just not. You're
yeah.
you're taking steps down the list here.
So if you can explain this succinctly to a person who knows nothing about games, that's your rule of thumb to determine what tier the IP is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a super fun way to think about what you collect, honestly. Because even just doing this with you, it's like man, I buy Digimon games. I don't want to say it's tier five, but like Jesus, it's tier four at absolute best. And it just makes me think about what I'm buying a little bit more.
You can collect whatever you want. Just if you're looking to park a good amount of money in
Yeah,
Digimon games,
yeah.
that's where it comes to be like, should I really be spending $2,000 on Digimon games, or should I be spending only $500 on a lower condition Digimon games and then saving the 1,500 for something that's more important?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. If your budget is $2,000, you might want to prioritize higher tier games that are likely to retain, like not even go up, but retain
Retain
value
value. Yeah.
versus shooting on this stuff that you really like. You're gonna love some games that are absolute crap, but you just might want to
Yeah,
move
true.
your budget in certain ways.
Yeah. Let's get
Which
into the
brings
buy
us,
sell hold though.
yes, buy, sell, hold
Yeah.
for the day. Metal Gear on NES. You can take it away.
What tier do you think it is first? Let me ask you that.
Okay, Metal Gear on NES. I'm gonna. Oh man, I'm between two and three right here. I gotta go three. It's too dead right now for me to put it in two. Like if we were to talk about Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid, I think 10, 15 years ago, I would say it's a tier two franchise, man. This thing is Metal Gear Solid's never gonna die. Like, you know what I mean? This
Never
is the
seen
biggest
that.
series ever. That's what I
Yo,
would have said 10,
Konami
15 years ago.
Konami messed it up, man. They just let Kojima leave. It's bad. But
It
anyway,
is bad spot right now.
65 total pop, around 8, around 9.6 and above, and 23 9.4 and above. So around the 9.4 A plus is sort of the cutoff when you talk about like the top 20%. But yeah, speaking about the longevity of franchise, it's a tier three, and I think it will always matter because some of those games are just so epic. But if Kojima is not at the helm, they're not gonna make. Even if they made a new Metal Gear game, I don't think people are gonna. It's not gonna be the same. Like he has such a interesting flair to his games. Like he's willing to take risks, and a lot of people don't do that. So I don't know how Metal Gear becomes anything more unless if somehow Konami's just like, hey, Kojima, take it. And I don't think they're going to do that because they had an acrimonious breakup. So
Yes,
it's
okay. I think if they were to do a new
not
Metal
good.
Gear Solid game or Metal Gear whatever, every single person would want to play it. They would give it a chance. It would have every opportunity to succeed, to become a main game, to be huge. I think that's how it is. Now, if it would live up to any of that hype, if it would actually be good, I have no idea. But I think
Yeah.
almost every single gamer would be interested and would give it a fair chance if they were to make it and give it that chance to become a tier two. Like, let's say I'm going to gamble on a franchise. I don't hate Metal Gear. Like, I don't hate the idea of buying that in hopes of it becoming better.
Yeah, but I mean, but the problem is that Konami owns the IP, and they're
Yeah.
not going to do crap with it unless if they're just making remakes of it, sort of like what Capcom does with old Resident Evil games. So it's never going to progress forward as long as Konami owns it because they don't care about games anymore, right? They let
I,
their
I, I
big
hate it,
franchises
man. I
die.
hate it. I know you're right. Like, I say this all about Metal Gear Solid. It will probably never get made again.
It is a tier three franchise. It's definitely not a tier two. It could have been. It maybe like you said, it once was a tier two, but it's relegated to tier three, and it's looking nothing but down. To be honest,
So right now, if you had a copy, buy, sell, hold, what are you going to do?
I would still buy it because I love Metal Gear. I would
Okay.
collect it. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
you're this is
I
this
would
is one where
collect it.
you're finally in on it,
The,
like just because
yeah,
you love it.
I would buy it for my own collection. I wouldn't spend an arm and a leg on it, but I just think like the Metal Gear Solid 2, even though people hated playing Raiden, it was so forward thinking about like AI
But
taking
we're
over.
talking NES here. We're talking NES.
Oh no, we are talking about any, but I'm
You're
talking about
jumping
the
all the way
IP in
to
general. But
yeah.
I'm
Okay,
talking about
okay, okay,
IP, the whole IP in
okay.
general.
Because I
Like
was gonna
even though
say,
it's
like,
a tier three,
I would almost rather just buy the PS1 version if we're being honest here. I know
because
there's
it's
a
a lot
ton of
cheaper. Yeah,
supply. It's super available and that, but like Metal Gear on NES is the start of it. Don't get me wrong, but everyone played Metal Gear Solid. That's the one
yeah.
that everyone actually played.
You should get a copy. You should get a
I
copy.
know. I know I should. It's like $1,000 to get a beautiful copy. I should get a
No,
copy. Yes, I
you should
will
get a
get a
copy.
copy eventually. Metal Gear on NES. I unless I can get it super cheap, I don't think I'll ever be a buyer. But I don't think I would dump it either right now. Like I don't know if you're
Yeah,
getting enough
I
for
would
it type
hold
of
it.
thing.
If you have a nice one, just hold it. Because you probably just love the franchise anyway. That's why you bought it to begin with.
Yeah, and you're not going to get a big premium. Like if you have a 9.2A plus copy of Metal Gear, like it's you're not getting.
Or
Is
the
that toxic to hold it just because?
No, I don't think so. You can hold it because you like it. I mean, that's something that you want. Maybe it's along the lines of your goals. So it's important.
Yeah, if
It's
it
important
aligns
to
with
have
your
it if
goals,
you
go
like
ahead
it.
and hold it. If man, it's hard for me to say sell it because I genuinely just don't think you get enough for it.
What do you think a 9.2 sells for? Like 2 to 4K ish? I think
Yeah.
two would be low, but
Yeah, no, I think 2 to 4K. I mean, here, let me just see really quick
yeah,
if there is a recent sale. Metal Gear. So, oh my god, dude, June 2024,
yeah,
9.4A CGC
yeah,
copy is
yeah.
$1,300.
Oof,
It's free,
that's
dude.
cheap, man. Yeah, that's cheap. Yeah, maybe you should get an NES copy too. Now you want one. Now you want one.
Like, I mean, there's WATA
Damn.
9.6A plus. I think that's what you said to Target. That sold May this year for 75. So that's a lot more real. There's a big
Yeah,
jump there between the grades.
yeah. I
Like
mean,
getting
it's
into that upper tier.
the A and the A plus is a big deal. I mean, the cases are also different, but yeah, that sounds pretty cheap for
2K
1300 for
is
9 for
so
A.
there you go, right? If you have a 9.2A plus and you can only get 2K for it,
Hold that shit.
yeah,
Hold that shit.
don't bother.
Hold, hold.
Hold. There's more future for
Hold.
Metal Gear, I believe. Hold. But
Yeah.
that'll do it for this episode, Cheat Code Weekly. Let us know your thoughts on the tiers. Let us know if we screwed up any franchises. Are there somewhere you think that's on a tier 3 or that's on a tier 4? Definitely let us know because it's hard to group all of these, but it's an interesting thing to look at. I appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.